The Graphic Histories Podcast.
I got bit by a radioactive bug. I tried an experimental drug. Went up for a stroll on a gamma testing range. I found an enchanted hurricane. I made a serum that made me small. I modified the serum so it would make me tall. Radioactive isotope in my eyes. Dying alien helped me accessorize. I gained the proportion and strength of a spider. Now I'm invincible and I can fly. I lost my sight, my other senses were heightened. I'm gonna put on my pajamas and go fight crime.
Hey, and welcome to the Graphic Histories Podcast. My name is André and I'm your host. Thank you to Ookla the Mock for our theme song, Superpowers. And thank you, gentle listener, for tuning in once again to the show. I hope this day finds you well. I hope you enjoyed our last episode with Rob Gilroy from Chew. That was a huge get for me. Very excited to have him on the show. I was a big fan of his work and I had a really good time talking to him. I know I've talked about all this before, but you're going to have to hear it again. Today in the show, I have Marvin Wynn, independent writer, comic creator, who is the co-creator of The Edge independent book through Second Sight Publishing. Now, Second Sight Publishing has been a publishing company you're probably familiar with if you're a longtime listener to the show, because many of their writers, creators, and artists have been on our show. Partially because I connected early with somebody that's a representative for them and has been really good at getting me in touch with many people related to their books. And also because they are very good at promoting themselves. If you're an independent comic creator out there, if you're a writer, an artist, somebody who wants to get your book in the hands of other people, if you want to see the drive, the dedication it takes to truly take a grassroots thing like a self-published comic book and get it distributed nationally through a company like Diamond, look to that company, because everybody that works for them are incredibly gifted, incredibly driven, and incredibly good at self-promotion. Like, they're a benchmark, I would say, as far as things go, because they get things done. You know, there are a lot of local people that just love comics, that want to get it. I say local, I mean local to the world. But there are a lot of people that just unified in their love of creating, of their need to get their stories out there. And they work so well together in doing that you really should take that as an example of what you should be what you should be doing rather to get your things out there, because they do a really good job at it. So kudos to Second Sight Publishing. My voice is a little raspy today. I had a 3-day wrestling tour over the weekend, in which I know I've discussed it several times in the show, but in one of my side gigs as a professional wrestler, and it was a lot of yelling at the crowds. Just the usual stuff. And yelling over the crowds kind of can have a bit of a harshness to your voice, and it certainly has hit me today, so I don't sound my usual perky self. That is why. But it was a super fun 3 days. One of the days was in Guysborough, which is very close to where I grew up in rural Antigonish, an area called Bayfield. So a lot of my family members came out to the show. It was pretty surreal. I had quite a lot of support from the crowd as I fought various bad guys in regular matches and in a tag match, and the crowd was crazy loud and super supportive, and it was neat to do that in front of my friends and family. So it was a really rewarding and nice experience to do that over the past weekend. A little behind because of that on catching up on some of the various comic, movie, etc. things that are out there in the world. I haven't had a chance to see Venom yet. I've heard decent things. I've heard it's better than the last one, which I had a middling opinion of. I wouldn't say I loved it. Wouldn't say I hated it. I'd say it was fine. It was fine. Soup is fine. Do I crave soup? Not really. Would I go out of my way to get soup? Probably not. But if someone gave me a bowl of soup and said, hey, eat this soup, and I ate it, I'm sure it's fine. Before you started sending angry letters saying that I compared Venom to soup, which I guess I did, no, I'm sure this one is good. I like Andy Serkis. I know he directed it. So I'm interested to see how that goes. Woody Harrelson's great. Tom Hardy's great. All that stuff is fun. There's rumors it somehow connects to the other Spider-Man movies. We'll see how that goes when I watch it. I'm hoping it'll end up with Venom getting a big white spider on his chest, because I'm just really missing that part of his design. I feel like he's just a black blob with eyes. That's it. Fighting a red blob with eyes in this one. So, I'd like to see something in his design. As a graphic designer, I notice some of these things. And I wouldn't say it offends me, but it just sometimes, if the aesthetic isn't as good as I think it could be, it's disappointing. And I feel like Venom's design in the comics is so iconic with those teeth, that mouth, the eyes, his size, and that spider. I'd even go so far as to put the little white squares on the back of his wrist, like he used to have when he was first designed, and the spider on his chest. Because it's a really iconic design. I know when Spider-Man went to the symbiote costume, it was kind of controversial because it was the first sort of different version of his costume, aside from some one-offs here and there. And but it was very cool, basic but super cool and unique. And when it was translated through the story to Venom with the symbiote, and then you went from kind of Spider-Man's slim exterior to Venom's sort of bulky, muscular exterior. It translated well, but it was different still, just because it was on a different body type, and I feel like we need that back. So if you're listening, Marvel Comics, I'm sure you are, or Marvel Studios rather, or Sony Studios, or some combination of the two, please bring back that white spider. Do it for your old buddy. Do it for André. And you, gentle listener, you can do something for André too. You can listen to this episode and listen well, because Marvin's a cool guy, very interesting cat. We have some great discussions about his sort of his grandfather's influence on his life with books and literature, instilling a love of reading rather, which translated to writing, and where it went from there. So without much further ado, please enjoy this conversation with Marvin Wynn.
Hear me?
Yep.
One more time.
Oh, yeah. No, does that sound better?
Yeah, it works now. Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
I'm trying to figure that out. Why does this keep changing
it? Yeah, no problem at all. I'm getting to be quite the Zoom tech support when doing these sort of interviews, because sometimes people are trying to figure out the way the system works or what's going on with their thing. So getting all the bugs worked out. So things are good. Where are you located at?
Pittsburgh.
Oh, right on. How's the weather in Pittsburgh today?
It's weird. This is like some kind of fish dome here, because it's cold in the morning, and then it's warm in the afternoon, and then it's humid later in the day. So it's up and down all the time. So we got really, really different weather. It could be different, like in the same day. Like it could snow and then be in the 70s later.
Yeah, we get a bit of that where I'm at. I'm in Nova Scotia, Canada. So in the mornings, it's cold overnight, and then it gets to be like plus 20, in the middle of the day, which is nice. And then, we're on Celsius, but then then at night, it'll go right back down to like 0. So you get frost, but then you get like days with the windows open. It's just somewhere in between. You from Pittsburgh originally?
Yes.
Oh, right on. Born and raised right in the city?
Yes.
Oh, wow. And what'd your folks do?
Sorry?
What'd your folks do?
Oh, they're both retired.
Oh, really? When you were young, what did they do?
So my mother worked for Highmark,
mm-hmm.
and my dad was a truck driver.
Oh, wow. And how did comics enter the picture? Was that something you always were into as a kid?
So I got into comics through G.I. Joe. So I watched the G.I. Joe animated series when I was young, and then found out that there was a G.I. Joe comic book, because they did the advertising for it during the show. It was the only thing that had advertising for comic books was G.I. Joe. So from there, I got into Spider-Man, because Spider-Man is Amazing Friends.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, I moved to Captain America, onto Avengers, and then X-Men. And then X-Men was where I'll plant my flag. It's been where I started feeling like, man, this is some really good stuff. These stories are really amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started wanting to do comics when Image was formed. So once Image was formed, it was like these guys going out and doing it on their own. I'm like, man, that sounds like something that could be doable. So I started writing in. My grandfather was a poet, so he put every book was available in my hands when I was younger. So I did a lot of reading.
Like, was he was a poet his job, or is it just like a hobby for him, or was he?
Well, I mean, I would probably consider a hobby. He did publish some books, but it wasn't something that he did full time or as a real professional, I would say, because he wrote a lot of poems, but he only had 2 books, so he had a lot of stuff that he could have gotten done in this time. But
Well, it's still
I mean,
impressive for 2 books.
Really, I would say, yeah.
Yeah, 2 books are very impressive. Even that's amazing. What was his name?
Robert Plum.
Oh, okay, very cool.
Yeah, we call him the Plum.
Very nice. So when you were getting into, like, because Larry Hama was writing, I'm assuming the G.I. Joe comic at the time.
Yes.
And as like, what age would you have been roughly when you started reading those?
What was that, 82? So I would have been 8.
Okay. And at that age, could you notice? Because I always find it interesting in how people get into comics, especially if it's through a known property, because usually the quality of the property is significantly different than the comic. You know, like if you read like the He-Man comics compared to the He-Man show, I mean, the show was pretty basic and not great. And the comics are actually, pretty great as far as the art goes and some of the storylines. And G.I. Joe was kind of the same thing for me. Like, I had a few of the comics growing up. I got in through Spider-Man, but the comics, I remember being quite impressed with how different and darker they were than the tone of the show. Yeah.
I mean, when we were talking like cartoon stuff, sophisticated cartoons, Robotech is the one that I always bring to the fore, because it had the soap opera element to the story, but then it was the first time in an animated series where people died. And like the G.I. Joe, they would always parachute away, or they go to blow up the tank, they would jump out and run away. And this is the first time where you're like, oh man, you got Roy Falker gets shot and he's sitting on the couch and he started bleeding out on the couch. And you're like, oh, he's going to be okay. They'll patch him up and be back out there. And like, oh no, Roy's dead. That's kind of traumatizing. And when you're younger, that like you've been watching like your G.I. Joe, your Transformers, your Silverhawks, your Thundercats, and things of that nature. No one dies on those shows. Then all of a sudden, well, Thundercats, you had Jaga die, but he was old. Like that was more or less the Star Wars element to that show. It was. It wasn't like he got shot, walked away, and then bleeded out on the couch. And then he's like, and like the next scene, they're like, there's a funeral for the guy. You're like, wow. And then they just start killing people off continuously on that show. Like, this is nuts.
I remember as a kid, it's probably around that same timeline, I discovered a comic called Strike Force Morituri.
Yes.
And it was, have you ever read it?
Yes.
I've talked about it a few times, and it's one of those like gems of old comics that hardly anybody's read, but it's amazing. And like the whole show, or the whole comic rather, and I think they attempted to make a TV show and movie out of it that never came through, and I hope they do someday. But it's all predicated on the fact that everyone dies all the time. You get to meet people, they die. If they don't get killed by aliens, then the process that gives them powers makes him explode. So dude might be like, just have a big battle, and you're like, oh, good, this hero won, this is wonderful. And then he'd be like, oh, it's my time, and he'd explode, and you'd be like, oh, like you never got attached to anybody. And that was a real eye-opening experience for me as a kid as well. So that's interesting that you kind of gravitate towards that.
I mean, then Voltron was similar too. You had one of the Voltron Force that in some of those episodes, and I mean, it's never really gotten to that point again. A lot of these animated series is they just went along, and then no one died again, and then the Transformers movie came out.
Yeah,
and everybody started dying in that. It's like, man, they just went, and then the G.I. Joe movie came out, and they had to change it because of Optimus Prime dying, because Duke was dead, and there's anything, and they even said that in the original script he was dead. Like, he took a snake to the heart. Like, that's not a coma, that's death.
Yes. They had to make some room for Sergeant Slaughter, so I guess they moved it aside.
Right. So, and I think that a lot of that stuff had a lot of effect on me in my early writing is, and a lot of the image stuff, and I didn't think it was good at all, the original stuff that I did. So a lot of the stuff I chucked to the side, and then I started taking writing classes, did some business classes.
So what age were you around now?
This is in the 90s, so I'm 17, 18.
Okay. So Image is Spawn, really predominantly Shadowhawk, that sort of stuff, and that all hits that leaned you to say, I'm gonna,
Youngblood, yeah, Spawn.
Very cool. Very cool. So you took writing classes. Where at?
I did that at the like a local school, CCAC, and then I did some classes at the University of Pittsburgh also.
Oh wow! And like the writing, like when you go into a writing class in university, and they're like you're talking about what you want to do with this. Is comics something that you will reference, or is there still a bit of a stigma about that in amongst other writing peers in that world?
Well, I mean, I showed some of my scripts in school, and people seem to like it. I wouldn't say it's a stigma. I think it's more of a unfamiliarity with the process.
I see.
Of writing a comic script, because most people never seen it before. Like they're used to novels, they're used to prose, maybe movie scripts, but a comic book script is a whole different animal and a whole different beast of work, because you're working within those panels. So you're having to describe what's happening in that panel, what people are saying in this panel, how you do scene transitions, because you have to make someone flip the page. It has to be something at the end of that last panel on the page that makes someone change to the next page to continue the story, because if it doesn't grab them, they're like, oh man, I'm not changing, I'm not turning this page, I'm throwing this one to the side, it's boring. So it's a whole different thing when you're looking at a comic script versus a script written for movies or something that's a novel.
I feel like movies may be a closer comparison in that, because you have storyboards and that sort of stuff to kind of go along with that. But yeah, I guess it's just because from that time period, the early 90s or mid 90s, comics were still not quite as mainstream as they are now, as far as being adapted into other works and also being as respected on outside of the industry. Fans would know all this stuff. They know, Watchmen, they know all the big ones, but you hand it to Joe Schmo who only reads novels, the line might not be there, and there may be a bit of stigma from that. I've gotten it from other interviews from people that have said that they've had similar experiences, but it's nice and kind of refreshing to hear someone that goes into a writing course with that and to not really get a lot of judgment on it. That's really cool.
Right, but the thing about it is now you can go to some of these schools and they do have comic writing courses.
Yeah. So what the scripts that you had brought in, are they just spec scripts you had written on, or did you already have original characters and stuff in mind, or were you writing sort of fan stuff, or?
So back then I created like 400 characters, and I wouldn't say they weren't fleshed out, but like it was a very small subset of the characters had like any fleshing out. Most of them were just, hey, there's a guy with a name and this is his power. And it's never enough to have a fully fledged character just to be a name and a power. I mean, there isn't anything to go on. What is this guy's likes and dislikes? I mean, what kind of food does he eat? What kind of food doesn't he eat? There's so much that you have to bring into the fold of this character so you know who they are before you actually can start writing that story, because you need that character to tell you how they want to react to certain situations at sometimes. And sometimes you want to put obstacles in their path, and you need to know how they're going to get over that obstacle. Are they going to jump over that barricade? Are they going to try to go under it? Are they going to go around it? Are they going to knock it down? So those are just things that, as a writer, you need to know up front before you get to that obstacle. And like, so I don't know what this guy's going to do now. Scene transition, or it's the old, what do they say? When you reach a lull in a story, you send in a couple guys with guns.
Yeah, the classic Hitchcock. If you see a gun, so you have to see someone shoot it, right?
Yes.
Excellent. So, as far as the course goes, what did you feel like that added to it, like the things you just described? But as far as your writing goes, it was more about fleshing out. Like that's what you learned is fleshing out actual characters.
Right. Fleshing out the characters, and not only the world that you're creating. The world you're creating is a character also, and you have to make sure that world feels not only lived in, but something that makes sense and is relevant to the people who are reading the story.
And the as far as the world building aspect of it goes, like just glancing, I haven't had a chance to read your book, of course, yet, but I am going to look it up now that after we talk, and I've done a little bit of research, just what I could find online. It seems like your book, The Edge, has like a lot of characters. Like it's a fairly big world. So as far as keeping track of all that goes with all those various motivations and stuff, you feel like that's something that you brought into that, or is it something that just sort of built naturally, or you went in with that in mind?
I somewhat with it in mind because as Rick said, I created a lot of characters before, and it was the fact of whittling it down to not just manageable, but characters that were characters and not just placeholders or someone were throwing out there and say, oh, here's so and so with lightning coming out of his eyes. Oh, he's dead now because we couldn't figure out what to do with the character. We eventually even started pushing some characters together. So there were a few characters that I liked, and I was like, they're not really fleshed out. So they became amalgamations of each other. So that narrowed it down. It's like we had a lot of characters in the team originally that just got narrowed down to what seemed manageable and worthwhile. Like characters I thought that people were going to get interested in.
And are your characters predominantly like do you mine from your life as far as the characters go, the personalities and what describes
somewhat
them?
I mean it's the personalities and then it's over topics. So you take someone's personality like similar to mine, because I spread myself out between 3 of the characters and say I would probably think like this if I was this age, or I would think like this when I was this age. So maybe make this work, then dial it up to 10 and see how that works with the world that we're creating, because everything is being thrown at them in such rapid fashion that all of the way they react to it is going to be really different than a regular person who's going to react to the same kind of situations if it was a real situation.
Very cool. So how did the parents take that you're going into writing as a career?
So I mean, I kept my day job.
Okay.
Let's just say that.
Well, what was your day job?
I work in IT.
Okay, right on. Very cool.
Yeah. So I keep the day job, and I don't want to. It's not a hobby anymore because now I'm getting paid to do it. So I want to one day just do comics for a career. So hopefully one day soon that can happen for me.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like you're making the right steps. That's for sure. So the family's been supportive somewhat, as long as you keep a regular career on top of that.
Yeah. So I mean, like I said, my granddad set it all up by his poetry, and it's just a transition for me because I'm the only writer in the family now.
Yeah, that's very interesting because it's very cool that your grandfather kind of got you set up with that and sort of got it. Was poetry something that did that give you an interest in poetry or just literature in general?
I would say literature in general, because like I said, that I read like a lot of novels when I was younger. I read Dracula really young. I read Frankenstein really young. I read like Malcolm X's biography when I was really young. My granddad put the dictionary in my hand one summer, and I just went through the whole entire dictionary, and he had me write sentences for every word in the dictionary.
Wow,
just so I could, to learn.
Like he really mentored you. Just trying to make sure you. Do you think maybe he was trying to like, I guess, preserve some kind of a love of reading and literature in his family, like in a way that.
That's what I mean, and just learning is that like being able to phrase things in ways and be able to be in a conversation with people and be able to not like trip over your words or to not use the same words over and over again, or just trying to teach us that there's more to life than video games and football.
as someone from Pittsburgh, I can imagine that the football especially probably falls pretty far into the public eye. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Do you have brothers, sisters, or?
I do not. I am an only child. I have cousins.
Oh, okay.
I'm like we're really close. So my cousins are like my brothers and sisters. So.
Oh, very cool. I was just curious if he was this was something that he may have saw in you, or if it's something he did with all of his grandkids.
I mean, it's one of those things where it'll work for some and not for others.
You put a book in his hand if he reads it or not. I guess.
I took a liking to it, and you want to have something to share with granddad. So like I didn't like football when I was younger. I watched it because my granddad watched it. Now that he's gone, I don't watch it anymore. So I mean, it was just something to share. So and then I kept the writing. So I dropped the football and kept the writing.
Oh, it sounds like you kept the important part.
Yeah.
So like when you had the writing kind of the know-how and the knowledge and you started, was The Edge the first book you had worked on, or was there other things before that?
So I mean, there's been little things around, but this is my first love, and it's something that I put a lot into. So it's going to always be number one in the heart. I mean, there's other things that I want to try with my artist Mark, and we're probably going to get to those probably maybe next year. But like The Edge is number one. It's always going to be number one. Nothing's ever going to be able to take its place in my heart. The Edge.
So where did that start? Like, where did describe the world to me? I guess the story and where did it come from?
Right. So I mean, it's I don't want to say it's topical, but it's a lot of reading news, and present, past, and things that probably happen into the future. So the Edge is a drug, and it grants special abilities in a certain portion of people. The problem is that it's either going to cost you your sanity or your life. So it's going to either kill you or you're going to go nuts from using the powers. Most of the characters are unaware of this, so they're pretty much using their powers as they see fit. No one has any control over their abilities. We have characters who are in situations where they lose abilities, or their abilities don't work like they think they're going to work, because to me, it's not a muscle memory. It's not something you can remember. It's not something that you can teach your body to do. So a lot of the characters make mistakes. One of our characters, Interim, she has the ability to open portals. So we call them step portals. So she can use them to either transport people to places. She can use them to see a few seconds into the future. So she knows what action someone's going to take. So she can use it both offensively and defensively. The problem is that she's left these portals open around where she's been, because she's been opening them since she was young. She can't close them anymore. So the portals start to mess with the time stream. So where she's from, it's 24 hours ahead of the rest of the world.
Very interesting. Sounds like it's a great concept in that it lets you explore a lot of various sci-fi tropes at the same time, instead of just picking one. You can kind of have a little fun with everybody in that way. That's really cool. I'm interesting that I brought up Strike Force Morituri, because obviously it seems like a similar concept as well. Well, not similar idea in that that there is a power comes with a price, I guess, and then one that we have to pay for. And
you said I didn't send you the preview PDF?
Yes, you did. Yeah.
Okay.
You sent me the video. Yes. Yeah. You didn't send me the files, did you? Like for the book?
I thought I sent you a PDF with the preview.
Oh, shoot. Okay.
It wasn't. I think I might have said it was in my link tree, but it's fine.
I will definitely be reading it. I saw the video and I'm going to share that social media and stuff, but I will definitely read the story as well. I'm excited for it. It looks really interesting. I love indie comics. It's something that I really, you never know what you're going to find. You find some true gems out there. It's really cool.
And I think that's where, like, so we've been doing conventions this year, and a lot of people are coming up saying, "Hey, man, I was reading Marvel and DC before. It's like, I don't want to read something that has 60 years worth of history that I have to go back and try to figure out what's going on in the story." And he said that what I like about indie comics is I can start from issue 1, and you're probably only up to issue 4 or 5 by the time I get to it. So there isn't that big long string of things that I have to know, or, oh, this character did this 80 years ago, so now and some writer decided to bring it back up, and I have no idea what's going on in the story.
That's an incredibly good point, because I find that especially with so many, I mean, a lot of things are getting adapted into movies and TV now, but things that I love, before you, I'd spoken with Rob Gilroy from Chew. He's the artist on Chew. And he, if you want someone to read an independent comic, even like Invincible or some of the big ones, The Walking Dead, whatever, you can buy a volume that has it all. And this is it. It's like reading a novel. You get the whole story, all of its stuff, much longer, of course, and less internal, because you're looking at images. But, you can have a finalized experience, get that closure and move on. And that's what I really like about indie comics, is usually they're done with a plan. I mean, short of Spawn or some of those other ones that have been long running, but you're right. You don't have 80 years of continuity to try to remember or keep up with. And especially in things like the DC universe, when they rebooted every 5 or 10 years, it's hard to keep track. It's hard to explain to somebody if they're like, I like this character, I want to see more about them. It's like, well, there's this, there's that. This guy was this guy, then he's from this universe, and then they put them together, and now he's that. Like, it's too much. So with indie comics, you get a defined story that you can envelop yourself in and not have to worry about any kind of baggage from, some crazy writer from 30, 40, 50 years ago.
Right. And like I said, that you're going to have that writer that's going to either say that, yeah, we didn't like that, so it never happened. And then they want to inject their own continuity. The next writer goes, whatever, brings back the thing the writer said he didn't want to deal with. So I mean, it's like up and down on that kind of stuff. Like, I still try to peek in on those books every once in a while, and I'm flabbergasted with some of the stuff that's going. Like, I have no idea. Like with the X-Men, where now they can come back from the dead, and they don't want to bring certain people back, and there's this council, and I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. They're on Mars, they're on the moon. Like, I'm just lost. I'm lost. And like, I was reading X-Men back in the 80s, and we went through Mutant Massacre, Fall of the Mutant.
I was going to say, would it have been Chris Claremont? Was that when you would have got into it?
We went through the Claremont stuff, and it got big, but it didn't get so big that you were like, huh? What? And then you have to go back and read those other books, and you're like, I still don't get it. What's going on in this story? I'm lost. What's going on?
So what drew you towards the X-Men specifically? You mentioned you plant your flag on them. What is it about those characters or that story? I mean, Claremont's a fantastic writer. I can understand the draw. But
I just like the Wolverine character. I just thought that you had this guy who you're wondering, why is he on this team if he just wants to be left alone continuously? Like, I'm this guy, I don't know who I am. Like, my memories are all jumbled. I've got claws in my hands. I got unbreakable bones. And he's just this cool character, and he's a little runt, and he's a midget. And he's running around, he's wrecking everybody. And he was just such an intriguing character, and they threw it all out by like explaining everything about him. Like, he was better off not knowing anything about this guy. And then you had Cyclops, and he was on a whole entire different spectrum of that. He was the guy who was there because he believed in everything Xavier had to say about everything. And then they did some dirty things with that character.
Yeah. I used to often like Cyclops specifically because he was like, he was kind of like the Captain America of the X-Men. He's like the guy, like, he's a good, like, I'm a fan of every aspect of comics, and not to go on a crazy tangent, but I feel like there are characters that are hoping to be dark characters. There are characters that are better when they're light characters. Batman's a good dark character. Wolverine's a good dark character. Superman's a light character. Captain America should be a light character. We need some actual guidelines as far as maybe good people or altruistic folks, and not just tortured maniacs that are doing this for some line of vengeance. And so Cyclops to me always fell into this category. And then and there's always this need. I know I'm not a big fan of the Snyder movies, the Snyder DC movies for the most part. I did like his cut of Justice League, but it's like everything doesn't need to be painted with a dark brush. Everything doesn't need to be gritty and dark. We have characters that's for. We should have some that are, great. So like, I feel like they've always tried to interest up Cyclops by like having him cheat on Jean Grey, having him, sell out Xavier and take the Phoenix Force, having him do this and make him almost like an extremist for his cause more than just a champion, like almost like a terrorist, really. And I always comes back, and then they try to like retcon it and make it okay, and then they always go back to it. I'm like, just leave him alone, let him be, a beacon of, they keep trying to add more baggage on him to make him more of a dark, interesting, gritty character. Because I think bad writers think that the only way someone can be interesting is if they're tortured, and you don't always need to do that.
Right, but I mean, you don't want to open up a book and then have a group of characters you don't like, you can't root for, and because it's not exciting, because you're like, I want to get to see what's going to happen to him next, and you're like, man, I hope he dies. I'm just tired of it. Like Cyclops has been done dirty for years. I'm like, oh my goodness, give this guy a break. Yeah, no, they literally just put him through the ringer every chance they get to try to make him more of a, he's a war criminal. He's this, he's that. It's like, just let him be a leader. Like, he was a leader. He did what he had to do. Sometimes it was a hard call, but he made it because he had to for his cause, But I mean, I guess like anything, if you let it go long enough,
it's going to be put through the ringer over and over again because they got to keep making it interesting, and they are sitting on almost 100 years of continuity soon to keep up with. So it's a lot. It can be a lot.
I mean, and that's one of the things that with my book is like we try to avoid. I mean, we want to make these characters three-dimensional, but we don't want to make them to the point of, man, I don't like that guy anymore. And it's funny because the guy that I think that no one should like, Revenant, who is he's kind of our protagonist / antagonist for the book, is the one that everyone seems to like. And I'm like, man, stop liking this guy. He's not a good person. Like this guy, he's a former assassin who doesn't want to work for the government anymore. So he goes rogue in the first issue. So he tries to kill his handler and then escapes into the world with the secrets of the Edge. And they're really not concerned about him telling anybody. They just don't know when to get a hold of him and get his blood. So his ability is he can duplicate himself off of a single drop of blood. So he's like an evil multiple man. So he's like a one-man army. So they would like drop him behind enemy lines with a knife, tell him to cut himself, and then take care of business. So his handler, Tartable, we don't really know a lot about him up front, but we're going to start revealing some things. And then you start to realize that maybe he's not a good person either, because now he wants Revenant eliminated because he doesn't want the secret out, the things that he knows also. So now you've got this team, we just call them the strike team, in the middle of all this. Their job is to get at Revenant before he can do whatever he's going to do, but there are things that they don't know that's going on in the back, because them knowing what's going on would stop them from probably doing what he wants them to do.
Oh, that's very cool. I find it very interesting when you speak to creators and especially writers too that discuss like reactions to how people like certain characters, and I think it's interesting as I did a bit of writing, some just indie stuff. I self-published and did sold at conventions and stuff. And, I do a little bit of acting and stuff too. And there's always elements of when you do art and you expect the audience to react to something or do something else. And then they don't, or they you find something hilarious and they never laugh at it. But to you, it's like the funniest thing in the world. So like, it's like Alan Moore, when he put out Watchmen and he made Rorschach, who's basically a monster. Like he's a racist, he's a repressed, he's a lunatic, and everyone's like, this is my favorite character, and Alan Moore's like, I don't understand why. Like he even said, you're totally missing the point of this character. He's a broken lunatic who is basically fed every kind of poison you can feed a kid to turn them into a monster, and this is what we got. And and everybody's like, yeah, this is the guy, this is my guy. Just because he's like tough or makes some bad guys pay for some other stuff they do. It's like, well, he's also like a lunatic, like totally out to lunch.
Right.
So that's interesting. There is a certain draw, and I think that might contribute to the conversation about why every character needs to be some dark and gritty, tortured soul, because there is certainly an appeal to that character to a lot of people.
Well, I guess it's like the way they do it in modern wrestling, where everybody cheers the bad guy and boos the good guy.
Yes, I have many hats I wear. One of them is I'm also a professional wrestler. I do.
Yeah, that's why I bought that.
Yeah. So yeah, if you're a cursory glance of my social media would tell you that. But yeah, no, it is very much the same thing. And you run into that a lot nowadays. The lines kind of blur with and I do kind of miss the old days where it was just cartoonish good guys, and especially when you had like a hockey player versus versus like a mortician, and this is the match you're watching and they're just beating the crap out of each other. Like that there's a fun campiness to that and comics kind of, and I always equate wrestling to comics in a similar way, because you used to have your sort of, everyone wore bright costumes, they all had sort of their abilities, which would be their moves or powers, and good guys and bad guys, they all had gimmicks, they all had some kind of a fun name, and then as comics moved on to like a more realistic tone, partially because of darker Batman stories, the Watchmen, that sort of stuff, wrestling kind of followed suit, like right around the same time period. They started getting into grittier storylines, more realistic stuff, and kind of abandoning some of that campy, fun, goofy stuff.
Well, what I like to say about the Edge is that it's a direct love letter back to the 90s.
Excellent.
It's got all the elements of your X-Men in the 90s, that the Wildcats, the Stormwatch books, a lot of that in there. So it's high energy, really good art. The story's good. I mean, even people tell me, so I'm not too much. People say,
Yes,
man, I really like that story. And it's all about escalation and it's long form storytelling.
And you're 4 issues in now.
Yeah, we're issue 4 comes out in November. We're already so issue 5 is in previews right now. So I'm promoting issue 5 right now, which is a challenge into itself doing a monthly book because
it's a monthly book.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent.
Well, so we are actually up to issue 18. So we're that far. Yeah. And we've got some I don't want to call them annuals because I don't know what the overall page count is going to be, but we're like stories in between the arcs. So there's a story we're putting in between issue 4 and 5 that was originally part of the original 1 through 4, but it was just too much to tell, so I broke it off into its own book.
Mm-hmm.
So then,
when was issue 1? Issue 1
came out in March.
Wow. So how was getting all of this published and written and done through the pandemic bit?
So that's the little part. So let's do a rewind.
Okay.
So back in March of last year, we were getting ready to release issue 10.
Okay.
So we've been self-publishing for a while now.
Yep.
And we were going to do a release party at the local comic store here. It's called New Dimension.
Mm-hmm.
They are the biggest store chain in Pennsylvania, and I think they have a store in Ohio also. But we were going to do a release party, and their general manager called me like a week before and said that we can't have anyone in the store, so we have to cancel this. So I'm sitting on this brand new issue number 10. The world's going to hell. And I'm like, I can't release this. I can't do it. I can't put this out there when people are losing their jobs. People are panicking. We don't know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, this could be it. I mean, I might not be able to release another book depending on what happens here. I felt like I had reached my limits of reach without being with a distributor. Mm-hmm. I was doing like direct to some stores, direct to people's homes and things like that. But we were cut off from international because of shipping costs. Like I did ship a package to the UK, it cost $60.
Yo.
And I couldn't continuously in good conscience charge someone that much for her. So you're going to spend $20 to get books, and then I have to charge you $60 to ship it.
Yeah.
So you're spending $80 for $20 worth of product. That's not fair to me.
No. And
the shipping is going to be the challenge for us forever. It's never going to change. It's never going to be a good deal for that. So I ended up talking with Spike Jarrell. He was the submission editor for Second Sight. And he's like, go ahead, submit your book. So I submitted the book. A week later, they said, you're in. So they were originally going to do direct. And then they were doing something through a distributor, a new pop-up that they originally were distributing games. Mm-hmm. And they were unable to meet the challenge of distributing books. It was too much for them, so they fell off. So then they pitched the Diamond, and we got accepted at Diamond, which then shifted us to this year. We originally were going to launch in November of 2020. So some of the books did get out in November of 2020. So I got out. We did a triple cover book. So it was 3 covers all connecting. And we did that limited, so that's all gone. Those are all sold out. So then we got with Diamond. The book came out in March. It was delayed twice. And I made the mistake of telling them that I wanted to go quarterly instead of just doing monthly because we had so many books already ready to go. So we didn't get issue 2 out until August, and it was delayed 3 times. So we're up to issue 2 out. Issue 3 is out into this month.
Yeah.
Issue 4 in November, issue 5 in December. So right now, because of the way Diamond works, I'm promoting issue 5 when issue 3 hasn't even hit stores yet.
Yeah, I've talked to that a bit with some people. How rigorous is Diamond to get involved with? Because it sounds like there's a lot of basically just shrugging and saying, well, it was Carla Nappi I spoke with a while back. Do you know her?
Yeah. She's with Second Sight. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, right on, perfect. Yeah, I quite a few. I hooked up with I had Peter Bro on the show years ago, and he kind of put me into not years ago, but about a year ago, and he put me in touch with a lot of names of people that are all through Second Sight. So, yeah, no, and just that Diamond's kind of been a bit of a hurdle sometimes with that. They just like shrug and say, it's delayed for whatever reason, this and that. You just have to roll with it.
Yeah. I mean, because there was no competition, what did you do?
Yeah.
Now there's competition. Now things are going to have to shift. You saw Diamond finally activate their pull box, which they should have had 10 years ago.
Agreed.
But you saw Comic Hub pop up, and there are other ones that have popped up since then. So they're late to their game of their own catalog. Like I want to liken it to Sears. So Sears had a catalog. They had the corner of the market on being able to pick up a phone, have the catalog, say, hey, I want to order this number. It would go to the Sears store. You would go to there, pick it up, and pay for it. They had the chance to one up Amazon and get online first. And for some reason, they chose not to. And now Sears no longer exists because they let Amazon beat them to the online game when they had the infrastructure to do this.
Yeah.
So you got the infrastructure in place. You got this catalog, and there isn't any way for you to order online books. That makes no sense. Like the internet isn't something new that came out 5 years ago.
Yeah.
It's numbers. There's no
it is strange, very strange in that way. I mean, obviously, I guess local comic shops, it behooves them to not have that as an option because they want you to go in there and buy them as you will. But
all right, well, but like with Comic Hub, all it is, you order it and it goes to the store. They don't ship it to you.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that. Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah, so that pull box is the same way. You hook up with your store on the site. It gives you the list in your area, and you say, "Oh, this is my store." You can have more than one, and you do pre-orders through the app.
It seems like it's easy. It's easier on the store too, instead of just saying like, "Hey, is that everything you get?" They do, and you don't have to worry about them missing something or going through massive lists of books.
Or like what the catalog is, there's an order form. You have to fill out the order form. You have to take it back to the store. Like, what the heck?
It's a lot of steps.
Yeah. And then, like you said, that if you don't get your order form on time, you miss the FOC, or they can't read your handwriting. Like, I don't know what code this is. What is this? I can't read this. So then it becomes like, oh, I don't have their phone number, so I can't call. So guess what? I'm not ordering their stuff. And you show up at the shop like, where are my books? Well, we couldn't read that, so we didn't order it. Like, oh, what the heck? So then, So, and it's something they should have been at the forefront of and not in the background of when it's their catalog.
Yeah, I feel like it's a too big to fail kind of thing when they get into a level. They're like, well, we have everything, and where else is anybody going to go? So we just do it this way, and it's easier. And there's no point in changing the model because why bother? Right. We've already got you.
But that was their biggest hurdle, and that's what they tripped over, and that's why they lost Marvel and DC.
Yes, and it must be a huge blow for them because that was, I imagine, a massive part of the distribution.
And so their submission process is still go on their website, print out a form, and fill it out. Like, what in the heck?
Yeah.
What year is this? Yeah. That should all be digital. I go on there, I fill out the form on the site, upload my submission, click submit, and you get it. It's still a paper process, and I'm like, oh man.
It's funny in the modern society how that is. It's almost like when someone calls you instead of texts you, you're just annoyed. Yeah. like somebody, who's calling? It's like my mom's the only person still uses the phone. But like, I did some work or a ad thing, and they're like, "Well, bill us for it," and they said, "Mail us the invoice." I'm like, "Mail you an invoice? Like, what is this? We have email. Why do I need to physically go get a stamp and a letter and send this to you? It's ridiculous." But interesting. So is there, like, for the Edge itself, is there an end in sight? Do you have an overall map for the whole story, or is it something that you're enjoying exploring as you go through it?
So when Mark and I originally started working on this, we did have an end in mind, but we started having so much fun with it that we've got so much story to tell. Just looking at our one character, Mystic, he's the character he has two swords. And he's got these scars going through his eyes, and this happens, and we'll explain it in the book because I don't like to do origins unless it's important to the story. So in issue 2, we start off with a slight origin of our character Bolt, and then it leads right into the modern part of the story. So with our character Mystic, he's the team lead. I don't want to tell his origin until it works into the story. So we do a little snippet in issue 6. So the swords are ancient, and you'll see in issue 6 that other people have these swords. Mm-hmm. And what we're doing with the character is that each time that the swords kind of adapt, it's going to change the way he dresses and somewhat of his attitude with how things are going. So originally he's wearing armor like a knight, and then he'll be wearing like a ninja. And then there's pirates had the swords. The sword goes back far. So I'm not going to spoil it, but it's going to be a very important part of the story later on where the sword came from and how it affects him and people who held the sword. So the sword actually read his DNA when it did the scars and kind of attached themselves to him.
Interesting. Very cool. Yeah, no, I'm excited to get into it as well. That's awesome. So how did you hook up with the artist?
It's been since 2008, so I have to. Sometimes I went back and I read our original emails, our correspondence, and Mark made the comment saying, "Man, I was really arrogant back then." I was like, "I didn't know this." He's like, "I don't work." There's something that he said in his email that he feels like, "Man, I was really arrogant," and that was like it was 2008. That was a long time ago. I want to say we met on Digital Webbing. I want to say that's where I saw his art for the first time, and then I contacted him. Are you familiar with Digital Webbing?
No. Is it similar to like a lot of people brought up DeviantArt and connecting through that, but I assume it's a similar sort of thing.
So it's a forum that's still up. They've moved a lot of stuff to Facebook, so it's like a art forum. So Digital Webbing back then, this was in the late 80s, early 90s. This was America Online time.
Oh, okay.
So it was Digital Webbing was one, and Pencil Jack was the other. So all of these artists that you're seeing now, Ryan Stegman, I'm drawing a blank on his name. The guy who was drawing Invincible. Ryan
Otley.
All these guys
Walker.
came from Digital. Corey Walker. All these guys came from Digital Webbing. Digital Webbing and Pencil Jack. Yeah.
Wow. It's funny that you mentioned those three because all their art styles are very similar.
Yeah.
And I remember a lot of people connecting through DeviantArt, and also Warren Ellis's sort of he had a few different ones over the years, but
the Image Forum, and Warren Ellis, and I think Mark Wade had one too. Mark Brooks is another one too. He came from Digital Webbing. Yeah.
Oh, that's very interesting. I didn't know about that. That's super cool.
Excellent. So, like if we ever had a Digital Webbing reunion, we can say, "Hey, this guy made it big, and this guy's still working on
it." I feel like almost every industry would have that, like that guy that was in a play with Tom Hanks when they were kids or something, that's still working at the insurance company in their town, and watching him win Oscars. It's got to be a humbling and interesting experience for a lot of folks. That's for sure.
Yeah, it just makes you. It's like leads you to work harder. That's all.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It's like, and then I fussed at I messaged Ryan. He was on Twitter and he was talking about something. I was like, hey, remember when you were doing that cover for me? You didn't finish. You want to finish that, buddy?
I still get that cover.
Yeah, you get that cover off.
Yeah. While you're counting your Invincible money. That's great. It's got to be so surreal too for those sort of humble beginnings, like in the wrestling thing as well. As recently watching this show Dark Side of the Ring. Yeah. And it just shows all these sort of like wrestlers and dark stories about their lives and stuff. And you see like the people that come from these super humble beginnings to where they wind up, and then usually where they end, which is somewhere back close to the humble beginning.
Right. It's like that movie, was The Wrestler.
Yeah, the one with Ricky Rourke. Yeah. It's funny because people bring that up. Well, they used to a lot more when it came up. People are like, is that what it's like? And I'm like, for some people, yeah. Like if people that either don't know when to get out of it or push themselves long beyond what their body can hold.
Yeah, like Terry Funk, and would he have like 172 retirement?
Yeah, I guess he's he's up there now, and I think he's kind of I don't know if it's true, but I think there's rumors that he has like dementia pretty bad now. So I mean, the amount of times he's taking shots to the head, I wouldn't surprise me in the least. Oh, very interesting. So what is I assume the goal is to try to hit with one of the major publishers eventually someday? Is that, or are you happy to be your independent thing?
I'm happy with Second Sight. I mean,
Yeah.
the book's getting out there. I mean, there isn't. I don't think there's anything else that can be done besides what I'm doing now. I mean, bigger reach, but I mean, that can happen. I mean, like other books sell 10,000 copies a month. We're not there yet, but we're hoping to get there. But I mean, you don't have to have the eye on your book or whatever. But I mean, you never know. I mean, lots of books are getting options for other things, and that helps with your recognition too. So
Yeah, absolutely. That seems to be. I've had that discussion a few times with various guests about how some indie books locally, not like super indie, like kind of the stuff you're doing, but more like Image comic stuff. Yeah. A lot of them seem like they're designed specifically to be a Netflix show. They're like this, someone's like, this would sell well to Netflix, so I'm going to make this comic.
Well, I mean, I think that a lot of that comes from a lot of these people who are doing it, like even with like Carla, she has a TV background. So a lot of these people are coming from different fields where they may have pitched their book as a TV show. And somebody probably said, man, whatever, we're not interested. So you turn it into a comic, and then here they come again. Hey, we want it now. We didn't want it before, but now it's a comic book.
Well, it's amazing how, like I've said this before, but it's amazing how, it's just giving somebody more realized version of what you want to show them, to say, here's a script. It may not capture it as if they say, here's a storyboarded script, basically, which is a comic book. That can really show you what it can be done and how they can frame what they can do.
And it's also that user base or that audience.
Yeah,
that
true.
Helps too.
The all-knowing.
You have an audience, like, oh, people like this.
Yeah, that's true. Ben, I spoke with Ben Dunn, and he mentioned Warrior Nun and all that, and how that's come to be. And it's interesting. It's just enough of an audience out there, enough people noticing to get your foot in the door, and then it can take off from there. So.
I mean, that's a long journey for Warrior Nun. That's from the 90s.
Oh, absolutely.
Like 30 years later.
Well, I've spoken with Sandy Crothers as well, who's the artist on the original Men in Black comics. And to speak with, and he is in my area. He lives in Prince Edward Island, which is another Canadian province very close to mine. And we've rubbed elbows at conventions and stuff where I'm usually there selling art and doing comic stuff as well. And, to talk with him about, just doing this sort of super low budget indie pressed comic with a distributor that was like nobody knew of, to go to like the Will Smith, Tommy Lee Jones movies, that are everybody knows, like well known. It's quite a journey, and definitely very interesting. That's why I love doing this sort of things. I really get to connect with people like yourself that are just all over the world doing the thing they love to do, and sometimes it hits, and these weird connections get made that you would never expect to see. So
exactly.
Very cool. So what's so the book 5 is coming out hopefully soon?
Issue
3 is distributed.
This month, 4 November, 5 December, and then so on and so forth. I think we're going to keep that until we get to issue 10, because that's where we were originally at. And we might shift back to doing the bi-monthly thing.
Do you find having the 10 in the can already, like, giving you a lot of freedom as far as time to get the rest of it done and keep going?
Right. I mean, I said that I think we're done with issue 15. Issue 15 is colored.
Oh, well, excellent.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can stay ahead, but I have to make sure that we're still staying very far ahead. I mean, because you don't want to turn around and be like, uh-oh,
exactly.
Now we're behind the 8 ball now.
Well, it sounds like you got a really good plan. Anything else that you want to discuss, or?
So, I mean, just let everybody know that issue 1 is probably unavailable through Diamond. So if anyone wants that, it's up on my website. So if you just want to post a link tree and whenever you post a video, you can get issue 1 through me. I have different covers for issue 1. If people want me to contact their local store, I do that like almost 3 or 4 times a month. I call stores and let them know what's new, what's going on. If they're ordering, if they're not ordering, want to know why they're not ordering, and then try to talk them into ordering, and then also making sure that their customers know the book. So I think this week I'm mailing out mailers to kick off issue 5, because issue 5 is a new story arc called Reign of Chaos, and it has double meaning because the character is called Chaos, and then his team is called the Reign.
Oh, very nice, excellent. Well, if any of the listeners want to get in touch with their local comic shops and demand to get the Edge in their pull boxes, that's how you do it. Otherwise, issue one through you. And it was really cool talking with you, Marvin. Thanks so much for being on.
Appreciate having me on. Thank you.
Oh, anytime at all. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And there it is, my talk with Marvin Wynn. I can't thank him enough for coming on the show. And as I mentioned earlier, he, like many people from Second Sight Publishing, all the people I've encountered, is incredibly good at self-promotion. As you hear in there, he's calling comic stores, seeing what he can do to get his book there, sending mail outs, doing all the stuff online to make sure his book gets in the hands of the people that want to read it. And that is what you need to do if you're an independent comic person out there and you want to get your story told, or read rather. You need to go do that. So he's out there in the trenches making sure his work is seen, and he's a great example, Damon out there who wants to pursue a similar path, and with his drive and his ability, I'm sure he will do very well, and I can't thank him enough for being on the show. But in the meantime, I'd like to thank you, gentle listener, for being on the show as well. I pointed at the screen when I said that, like you could see me. I don't know why I told you, but now you know just how ridiculous I can be sometimes. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to come back in a couple weeks for another fresh episode. I will announce the guest on the social medias. And please make sure to like and subscribe if you don't already, or just subscribe, I guess, to this feed, because that is how we keep the lights on, get those subscriptions coming, and I look forward to seeing you next week.